welcome to Hopeful Conversations brought to you by Robbie's Hope Foundation. I am your host, Kari Eckert. Joining me today is Soli Fico, a senior at Golden High School here in the metro area of Denver. She is involved in a few clubs, such as Sources of Strength and Student Council, and you enjoy hanging out with friends and family and spend your free time reading and writing. Soli, thank you for joining us and welcome to Hopeful Conversations.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm so excited. This is so awesome. I was looking forward to this all week, and I'm excited for today.
Wonderful. Let's go ahead and get started. We're going to talk about student burnout and the pressure to overachieve.
Perfect.
Okay, so how do you unwind at the end of a stressful day?
My favorite thing is because after school, I immediately I'm always driving back home in my car, whether that's alone with my brother, friends, family. I love to drive. And so when I drive, that's just kind of my time to reflect over the day and just take the time to breathe and relax. So I like to focus on my energy into driving and just like getting back home. And that's one of my favorite ways to just like let out and unwind. And when I do get home, just take a breather, whether that's, and I might get some food, drink, whether that's tea, coffee, water especially, get some snacks and just hang out for a bit and just make sure I'm ready to jump into the next thing.
Good advice for others. So learned behavior kind of sounds like a little bit too. Okay, so what helps you to recenter yourself when things get difficult at school?
Ooh, that's such a good question. It's so easy to be stressed out at school, especially with the more you take on. There's a lot more that goes on, whether that's through, academics, athletics, extracurriculars, or the culmination of all of those things. The easiest way for me to just, the best way for me to just calm down, not be stressed out is to talk to someone. I'm chatty. I like to talk to people, and whether that's like a friend or a mentor, trusted adult, like a teacher in my school, I love to talk to people, and it really does help me, feel more connected to, the people around me. But I also feel grounded when I'm not the only one who feels like I'm all stuck in myself. And so I do like to talk to people when it's necessary and when I do feel stressed out.
Very good. I'm so glad that you have that skill or that tool in your toolbox, because I think not all high schoolers have that. That's kind of, you had to learn that.
Oh, absolutely. And it's underutilized too, I would say. It's scary to speak up, and that's absolutely that's understandable. It's hard to be vulnerable. And so when you can shed those layers and allow yourself to be there, to be vulnerable to others, it's so rewarding. And talking to people, again, that could be at school, outside of school, like a third person, like a therapist or a doctor. But to be vulnerable and to allow yourself to de-stress through conversation, it's one of my favorite things. I'm very glad that I get the opportunity to use that.
I'm hearing, I don't want to put words into your mouth, but maybe that it gets easier with experience, expressing and asking for help and confiding in other adults and other people. Is that true?
Yes, absolutely. And the more often you allow yourself to not shut off the layer. That sounds weird when I say it like that. But the more you allow yourself to be open and be honest and connect to the resources that you need, the easier it gets each time. Like public speaking, like the first time is always stressful, but the more you do it, the easier it gets. And it's almost a routine too. And I think starting is always the hardest part. But once you start, you're rolling and you can go from there.
How would you define student burnout, and could you tell others maybe what warning signs to be able to recognize in themselves or in a classmate? Student burnout, how would you define it?
There's so many ways that people can be burnt out, whether that's mentally, like emotionally, physically. There's so many ways you can be burnt out, because it's very overstimulating, especially in today's world. Both in school, outside of school, there's a lot of expectations, things going on. But I would say student burnout is, where you feel depleted, and that's depletion beyond a fatigue.
What does depleted mean?
Depleted is like you're not fully there, you're not present, and you're trying to catch up and pick up the pieces, but you're doing it out of force in order to appear like you're present rather than being present because you are present. And I think one of the most, at least for me, the way I appear burnt out is if, because I'm normally chatty, I love to have conversation, I love to talk. If I become more quiet or more reserved, or seem like I'm more in my world, that's one of like the number one sign for like my friends, family, mentors to notice that, like, hey, like, what's going on? Are you okay? And like noticing like what's not normal for someone to do, because it can be easy to be burnt out, and sometimes it's recognizable, sometimes it's not. More recognizable when it gets to a point where it's like, okay, like something needs to change, something needs to happen. Um, but it's weird. Student burnout's more common. I don't know if that's the right way to say, but I
I
feel
was
like it's
thinking
become more
about that.
common.
What percentage of students do you think have experienced student burnout? You're a senior,
I
but
am.
like over like, ninth, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade
Mhm,
at your high school, which is probably pretty typical of a
mhm.
lot of other high schools across the
Yes.
country, what percentage of students do you think have experienced burnout?
I feel like everybody in some way has experienced burnout.
Everybody.
Everybody, whether you're taking all honors advanced classes or whether you're in like regular classes. I don't mean to say that that way,
Right.
but no
Probably
matter.
general ed would be the
Yes,
real term.
yes. Thank you so much. Like whether no matter what classes you're taking, what you're involved in, anybody has probably felt burnt out at some point. And some people can manage that more efficiently than others, and that is okay because that's something that you learn how to like manage burnout and how to come back from it. But especially like the more you take on, the more at risk you might be for burnout because there's just so much more going
More
on.
on your plate.
Absolutely. But to discredit somebody being stressed out or burnt out if they might not be doing as much as somebody else
Mm.
is not necessarily fair because everybody can feel burnt out and everyone's entitled to saying like, hey, like I need a break. Things are just a little crazy and
I
yeah,
appreciate how you point that out, that it's
mhm,
not just like the top of the class, the
not at
kids that
all.
are super involved and
Mhm.
lots of extracurricular. Um, and burnout, does it apply to more than just academics? Can it
Oh,
apply to
absolutely.
like a
Absolutely.
sport or an extracurricular or just life in general as a teenager?
Absolutely. I think burnout too, if it starts somewhere, it can spread out to other parts of your life as well. So yeah, it's absolutely not limited to academics. I feel like even burnout is very much a mental and emotional like fatigue. And whether that's through academics or through athletics, extracurriculars, it goes so much beyond just the work that you're doing. And it can really, affect the person who is burnt out or any of us in general.
It affect us in a physical way, in a
Mhm.
mental way,
Absolutely.
and then trickle into those around us
Mhm.
because of the way that we're responding to our environment.
Mhm.
Do you think, would you say that you have experienced,
Oh, absolutely.
what did that feel like?
I would say the most burnt out I felt was probably during my sophomore year. This was when we were doing remote learning due to COVID-19, and when we were still doing lockdown for the pandemic.
Very
I
difficult time.
Yes, it was a very different, not just for me, but for like a lot of other people as well. Everyone, dare I say. And I felt so burnt out during that entire year because, I loved school. I loved seeing people. I loved, being active, being involved, and, to not be a part of the things I was normally doing or to have that limited in a sense. I I felt more burnt out in the fact that I couldn't do the things that I wanted to do, but also that things were more difficult because they were different. And having to adapt to the new system of learning, like going from in person to remote learning, like that was difficult. And I know I'm not the first one or the only one who will say that. But it definitely made things more tiring and being, stuck at home or stuck in a much smaller bubble than you were in before. That's so easy to be worn down from.
A lot of unknowns at that time.
Oh,
Okay.
absolutely, so
So
much
your sophomore
uncertainty.
year, what did you like, if you recognize that you were burned out, was there things that you did to try to put yourself in a better mental state, physical state from that burnout? Things that worked for you?
Yeah, especially during my sophomore year. I think because we couldn't talk to people in person.
And you said that that's something that helps you.
Yes, yeah, and that's one of my number one things that I do to like revive myself, I would say. I would send emails to teachers. I would call my friends, text my friends, talk to my family because my family's at home with me, and I also learned to kind of like become more independent in a sense through adapting to that because when you're not with everybody else, you spend more time alone, and so you learn how to like find yourself through whether that's being in your room, like being outside just by yourself. You become independent in a way through that, and you kind of learn more about yourself in those ways too.
Was it scary at first?
Yes, it's so scary. Like inner self reflection can be terrifying, but it's so necessary to take the time, and because like you can wonder how everybody else is doing and care for everybody else, and that's awesome. But you also have to take care of yourself as well too, and so that time to not even be independent, but to remind yourself and just to check in with yourself every once in a while. That's so important.
Do you think teenagers are good at that self check-in, or is that like?
I feel like we know that it's important, but I feel like there's so many things distracting us from checking in with ourselves. Because again, we live in a very overstimulating world, and like it's both awesome and terrifying in
Scary,
ways.
yeah.
Not terrifying. Scary is a much better way to put it.
Well, it can be terrifying too.
Oh yes, that's true.
At times, certainly.
Absolutely, and there's so much going on, and whether that's through like social media, like there's so many ways you can trap yourself into these vessels, I would say, whether that's social media or just like trying to distract yourself, trying to push yourself further and further. Even though we may know, it can be easy to forget or to distract ourselves away from being like, okay, I need to just calm down and be like, am I okay? What's going on? And just make sure I am who I am right now, or I am being myself. And it's funny because I read in one of my classes last year, we read this article called Nation of Wimps.
Nation of Wimps. Tell me about Nation of Wimps.
Yeah, it was written in 2004.
Okay, so wow.
Yeah, like almost like 18 years ago, right. I think. So
were you born in 2004?
I was born in 2004.
Yeah.
It's almost as old as me, actually.
Yeah.
And it was written on, I think, psychology.com or Psychology Today.
Yeah, Psychology Today is a great resource.
That's right, absolutely. And the author, she was saying how in today's current generation, how parents and children have such a such a different relationship compared to those of past generations.
Oh, sure. What did she say about it?
So she was saying, for kids our age, or in my generation, Gen Z, if you will,
right?
We almost come to over rely on things around us, whether that's our phones, like our parents, our friends, family. We come to over rely on them and forget to learn to build through ourselves. And so
interesting.
I know it's very interesting. So in a way, we're wimpy, quote unquote, but it's weird because we were talking about this article in class and we were arguing like, does that imply that we are wimpy, or is there something else that is making us appear wimpy? And
I don't think your generation is wimpy at all.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
I think that's really unfair from what I've learned from working with all of the teens of Robbie's Hope.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like your generation is just like empowered.
Mm-hmm.
You tend to be very open-minded versus when I was your age, like you're exposed to so much, but you're able to filter it and with such like grace for others.
No, yeah, and I appreciate that because and that's the argument we made here too. We were like, so this is written from someone from an older, if you will, an older generation,
right.
And every generation has differences, similarities, regardless. And especially in today's age where the conversation of mental health and suicide and the really big vulnerable topics, they're much more talked about. They're much more, prevalent and apparent in today's world. And that's awesome.
So great. You used the word vulnerable. little bit ago. Like, we're learning to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
I will tell you, 30 years ago when I was in high school,
Mhm.
I was not vulnerable with my friends. I was not vulnerable with my teachers. And rarely was I vulnerable with my parents. And like, being vulnerable is beautiful. It's how we move together and how we're human.
It's how we be authentic.
Right.
It's how we show who we are, whether that's, whether that's in person, verbally, through writing, through reading. There's so many ways you can express who you are. And again, on the topic of vulnerability, just because we became more vulnerable doesn't necessarily mean we're wimpy.
No.
And that's kind of the discussion we had in my class.
I bet it was fascinating.
I
wish I could have been there to listen.
Oh my gosh, it was so fascinating. I loved that class so much. And we continued that conversation about that. But the consensus, and it's all about argument. We're not discrediting the authors.
No, and I was like, I kind of was thinking about her, like, I would say, like, parenting today is really, really difficult.
Oh, and it's so different too. Like, I'm not a parent by any means. I am not a parent, but it's parenting. It has changed, absolutely.
You use the word like frightening and scary. Being a parent right now has some fear to it. Like, I think as adults, we recognize that you, as our young people and as our children, as our offspring, parents only want the best for their children. And there's all, like, you use the word stimuli. Like, there's a lot of scariness in our world. And we want you to be happy, healthy, safe. And I think a lot of times we want you to be successful. And that's where the overachieving and the burnout can come from. And how do we get you to that place together in a relationship?
No, absolutely. And again, like, being vulnerable or being aware of the fact that we are burnt out, overachieving, or trying to be perfect doesn't necessarily make me or anybody else in my generation a wimp.
No.
And it's different. And again, we're not discrediting the author's article.
I bet it was a great conversation.
It was awesome, yeah.
Can we talk a little bit about overachievement from a high schooler? I've put so much thought into that, and I have a daughter who's 23 years old, so she just graduated from college a year ago.
Awesome.
Yeah, just the expectations of being a young person. I know, like, you're probably just finishing your college applications.
Oh my gosh, yes, it's been a process, but we're going one by one. We're doing it.
So, but I mean, where does that overachievement or just that drive to, I use that word successful, and your, opinion, your personality, your lived experience? Can you talk to me about overachieving?
It is easy to overachieve. I think from what I've experienced, overachieving occurs as a result of competition. And there's so much competition, whether that's getting into college or really wanting to have that job promotion. There's competition everywhere. And I don't know if that's because of today's society almost shining, like, putting the spotlight on those who've succeeded the most because they've bypassed their competition or they just had the highest ranks and stuff. But at least for me, I tend to overachieve because I want to do better. I want to try to be the best that I can be. But there's a fine line between overachieving and doing what you can because it's you. And if, like, overachieving, especially whether that's through, like, schoolwork,
academics,
especially academics, like whether that's writing more than what you need or doing more work on the side, it's so easy to become burnt out, especially through that, because you might be, yes, you're putting in more work, and that could be an enlightening experience, and I've had enlightening experiences through that. But it can also, you might be putting extra work just for the sake of competition too, just for that grade or for that promotion or for that recognition even. And so it's so incredibly easy to overachieve. And oftentimes that leads to burnout.
Is that pressure to overachieve, do you usually attribute that to what your self-drive is, or is it from society? Is it from parents? Is it from teachers? Where is that will come from, if you will?
I think it's a mixture of all those variables. I think especially because ultimately, like, no matter how much like your parents or your teachers or society tells you what to do, you are still making the decisions of what you want to do and how you want to put yourself forward. And so, in a way, you have to learn how to balance yourself. And whether you learn that through overachieving or through being burnt out, like you almost have to experience something to know what it's like to be in a better position. Like in order to know it's good, you almost have to go through what's bad. And I don't mean that like, oh, you have to do the worst things in order to know what the best things are. Like
No, I think you're wise by making that statement. I mean, it's a lived experience is very, very valuable. And sometimes the hard moments make us savor those good moments and want them more, right?
Oh, absolutely. It gives so much more value to, what is good for you, what's good for others, what is good in life. And like, I know through the way through how I would overachieve is, I would do much more work that maybe either whether it was necessary, whether it wasn't, I was not concise. I would try to go on and on and on about what I would do, or what I was trying to achieve and accomplish. And it takes a toll on you because you almost lose your goal. You almost lose your sense of like, I want to do this. I'm going to accomplish this. And it's very easy. It's very quick to lose that, unfortunately, especially through overachieving. Um, and that in a way like that helps me step back and realize like what am I doing, like this is something's different. I don't like this as much as I did before. I'm not finding as much passion or joy in this. Something has changed, and that's another thing you can recognize for burnout as well, is if your passions change, if you dislike something more, like something more. But it gives more perspective. The more you experience, the more perspective you're going to get, and that can be through overachieving, and that could be through burnout too. So despite how much of a toll that burnout and overachieving can put on someone, it can also teach you a lot too, in a sense. It's weird. It's very ambiguous. It's like a gray space. It's a weird relationship between those two.
Finding the balance. You used the word balance before, and it's hard to keep balance all of the time.
Oh my gosh,
We
yes.
have highs and lows. We have times when we're overachieving, and we have the lows where we're feeling burnout. I'll have to share with you. You're going to have these your entire life. It's not just related to your schoolwork. It's not, hopefully next year, it seems like you're going to be college bound. These things persist even in the working world, whatever field you choose to, be able to go into. But having that self-reflection and that balance. I was reading a quote about competition this morning.
Oh, nice. Uh-huh.
And it was actually really good, to Russell Wilson, our quarterback. And it was about, there's always going to be competition in this world, but there's room for all of us.
Absolutely.
And I thought that was I like that.
That is very nice. Yeah. Cause I like with balance, like you're absolutely correct. Like there's no, like as you go through, like there's never going to be like, I did it. Everything's great from this point now on. Like life is unpredictable. Life's tumultuous. And if you literally taking it day by day and not setting a label or a finite cap on something, you open yourself more to those possibilities. And like, okay, like tomorrow could either be a really good day, tomorrow could be a really bad day. I have to go through that and navigate my way through that.
Taking it day by day. It's just not the way our society operates.
I know.
By the most part, but like that's where you can find your true like self and your authenticity and being able to more react.
No, absolutely. Yeah. And like, again, like overachieving too can be related to the big picture. Like it's, the big picture is often how, like I would see things or people would see things, but it's just the big picture. There's so many small details that go behind it. And it's like you're planning an event. There's the balloons, there's the cake, there's the decorations, and then the big picture is all of that put together. And so when you get those little details, when you, again, take it day by day, assignment by assignment, practice by practice, whatever implication of the metaphor, the big picture is at the end, despite it being the first thing that we see.
I like that. Oh my gosh. I like how you just painted that picture of like the cake and the balloons. And I feel like as a parent, like it's really hard in society. Like we start asking kids really in late elementary school and in middle school, what are you going to be? Where are you going
Oh
to
my
go?
gosh, yes.
And that big picture is like constantly like so pushed upon you. And like I feel like we do such a disservice to kids. What does it even mean to be an engineer? What does it even mean to be a, some type of a scientist or a physician? Like all of these things that we start asking you at such a young age.
No,
We always have that
absolutely.
big picture versus the process in that day.
No, absolutely. And it's so funny you bring that up because, like, with me doing my college applications right now, it's one of the most like common questions, and it's
Oh, is it like
understandable.
an essay question?
It's yeah, like you'll find that often in like your essay prompts or when like you talk to people about like college, like a lot of people ask, so like, what do you want to do? Like, what's in your future? And it's cool. Like it's cool because like, oh yeah, I have this idea, and it's weird because like you said, like we start that so young. Like, oh, you should, well, not should, but you should start knowing what you want to do by now. And it's like there's so much more room. There's years and years of life to live, of things to go through, of experiences to feel before you even get to that point of like, this is my life after college. This is what I want to pursue. This is what I want to continue. And so if you start focusing on that big picture early, it's nice to have an end goal in mind, but that it's it's so much more of a burden to keep that as a finalized end goal.
Things change.
Things change,
You
yes.
grow up.
Mm-hmm.
You get experiences, exposed to different things. I just feel like it's not fair to kids, and it's such a normal part of our society. Like, does that make a young person want to overachieve? Does it cause burnout? Like I said, I'm going to be an engineer when I was in 8th grade, and that's the path that I'm taking. Different things come into that path.
Yes, and it's like it's almost too about accepting change, like accepting that things do occur and that's okay. And when you can recognize that and put yourself into that space, like, okay, things are happening, things are moving into whatever direction they're moving into. That speaks so much more than what I can put into words, and it's awesome to see that put into action.
So interesting. Well, it's no secret that high school today is very, very different than when I went to high school. Almost, I think I did have my 30th class reunion. I know I did. I didn't go, awesome. Sadly. I should have gone. Wow. But like a completely different experience. And I think, I don't want to put words in your mouth. I want this from you to be able to say, like, how would you explain high school today to a listener, to someone that isn't, maybe an adult listener that isn't in high school, and just the pressures and just what it's like, or in the good parts as well?
Yeah, I say high school. It's not High School Musical. I can say that for sure.
It's not High School Musical. Oh, with Troy.
I love that movie.
Troy and Turfette.
Man, they really misled us, didn't they?
And I bet you watched that when you were in elementary.
Yes. Like, oh great, I'm gonna be dancing around tables. No, I'm just kidding. I say high school today it's an opportunity. The biggest thing that what it is it's an opportunity. It's an opportunity of opportunities. There's layers and layers to not only what you can do in high school, but what you can get out of it. Like, yes, of course, it's typical for every high school to have its dramas, its cliques. Like, that's typical. Every high school is going to have troubles because everything has troubles. Nothing's perfect. Everything has flaws, and that is okay. That's a part of going through school or being alive in general. But high school is just a bucket full of opportunities, and there's so many things that you can do, whether that's through your own intention or whether you're placed into a class or something that just occurs unexpectedly. You learn in high school through your academics, but you also learn through the people around you, your experiences, and the way that you connect everything together. And it goes so much more beyond academics is what I can say. And I think that's what's been becoming the general definition of high school now is it's not, you don't go to school just to get good grades or just to get into college now. You go to school to learn, not only through education, but through people. and how to grow into the person that you are. And I think it's just a bucket full of opportunities. It's cool. It's really cool to see where you can find yourself at.
Yeah, I'm glad that you paint it with a beautiful picture. I think for a lot of young people, it's very stressful.
It is
And I feel
stressful.
like, I don't know, but maybe high school now today in 2022 is more representative of what like my college experience was academically, like with the pressures of like what we expect you to be able to learn and retain. I love that you're bringing in like all of these other connections and opportunities. Those are really, really good things.
No, absolutely. And there's no doubt that there is stress present in high school. Like stress is present everywhere.
Yeah.
And that's part of the process. Like as much as we would like to avoid that, we need that to grow.
That's how we grow. Yeah, we just said the same word at the same time.
Yeah,
stress creates
look
an
at us,
opportunity
look
for
at
us
us.
to grow.
Yeah.
So I think sometimes we choose to avoid stress, but sometimes we can sit in it and see that it allows us to grow as well.
Absolutely.
Can you like give your like insight about the correlation between overachieving, student burnout, and just mental health of a young person? Is there a correlation? Is there a connection between the two?
I think there is a correlation. Whether you can actually define that correlation, I'm not sure. Because I feel like everybody's mental health process or their journey and everybody's version of overachieving and being burnt out is different.
I
And so,
absolutely agree.
Yeah, and so like yes, there is a correlation. Like your mental health can be affected because you are burnt out and because of overachievement, but you can overachieve and be burnt out because of your mental health as well. It goes many ways. It's weird. Um, and if there was one specific correlation to put through it, I'd say is that like one can lead to the other, or the other can lead to one. Because again, there's nothing finite about that. There's so many. The experience is different for everybody. But it's important to the overall importance is that like if you are burnt out, if your mental health is not where you would like it to be, then that is something that you deserve to that's something that you deserve to have to be changed, and you deserve the access to resources, the access to anything that will help you better your state and your condition.
Yeah, absolutely. You deserve. I think you also, as regardless of age, like it's a self accountability and a self responsibility to be able to recognize. It's certainly a learned behavior, but to be able to recognize the highs and lows that you experience, and really to learn when you need to get someone else involved. When is this too much for me to handle on my own?
And it's unbelievable like how many resources are out there, but how little connection there are between people and those resources. I have an awesome friend. She and her and I were talking this year, and she brought up to me, she's like, I think there's so many resources, but a lot of people don't know that there's resources or that you can have access to these things. And so she's awesome. She created a website, and she was talking to people to get stories from others of how getting connected to a resource, whether that's a therapist or a friend or a mentor, how much that benefited that person in the long run, and how, it's okay to reach out.
And it's absolutely okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
We say at Robbie's Hope, it's okay to not be okay. But it's not okay to not ask for help if that's what you need. These resources. Yeah. I think your generation is doing a nice job. We talked about Gen Z. We talked about being wimpy, which I don't think that you are. Often I find that there's a disconnect between adults and young people and mental health, kind of a misunderstanding. And I feel like some changes have occurred because of COVID. We've learned that everyone has mental health.
Oh, everyone's a human. Everyone's living. Like it's a part of all of us. And like you said, it's cool to see how like, adults and children, like we can still relate in the fact that we can be stressed out and we can feel like things are not going well. And like you said, like COVID really shed that light on that topic, because, like the 2004 article Nation of Wimps, like that was written 18 years ago.
Yeah.
And to today's age
Very
is so
different
different
time.
from what it was
Yes,
18 years
absolutely.
ago. And so like things have changed, and it's cool to see that recognition being put where it deserves to be at, and to see how, we're growing in a positive
In a
direction
positive
too.
way, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, about 20% of our population, all age groups, all demographics, has a diagnosable mental illness. That's what statistics will show us. And that really hasn't changed over time prior to COVID or post COVID.
Yes.
But we all have mental health, and most of us can do a better job taking care of our mental health. And I feel like we can learn from your generation. Have you experienced an adult that has either been supportive or not supportive?
Yes.
You don't have to name the adult, but can you explain maybe what that is? Let's start with an adult that maybe was not supportive of you expressing your needs.
I'm very fortunate because I have not met very many non-supportive adults.
Good.
I'm very grateful for the community and environment that I live in, that I spend my days in, because there's not very many of those people who are not supportive.
I'm sure they're there, but I'm glad.
Oh, they're there. Yeah, of
Right.
course they're there.
Yeah,
but it's because they too, like when I talk with my friends or when I hear their stories, when I listen to their stories, they'll tell me about, their experiences, whether that's with adults or other kids their age or anybody else in general. It's unbelievable how just a lack of support from somebody else can really contribute to a decline within oneself, or a lack of like stability within oneself. But like hearing others and listening to what they have to say about, the adults in their lives who have been not supportive, or, lacking in, empathy, I guess you could say.
Absolutely.
It's unbelievable how much that does affect others.
I can see like your body language, how like you're internalizing that, how hard that is for you. I'm so grateful that you have a supportive adult community and friend community, but I can see like as you're explaining that hurts to think that there's people that don't have, and how that don't have support.
No, it hurts, whether it's because you've experienced it or because you've seen it. It hurts to see others struggle when they don't have to struggle.
Yeah.
To see others burned out when they don't have to be burned out. To see others overachieve when they don't need to be overachieving. And there's gonna be times where like we're burned out, we overachieve, but there's also gonna be times where we are, but we don't need to be. And it's surprising to how often that does occur, where like, oh, we're burnt out, we're overachieving when we don't need to be. And that can, whether that's a lack of support from others or support within ourselves, and that's something you want to avoid, and that's something you learn from, and you become stronger through learning from that. But adults that I'm so grateful.
Do you want to talk about the positive adults that you've had in your life?
Yeah, sure. I'm very grateful for the people that I've had in my life. I'm very fortunate to have them here. I have trusted adults, trusted people everywhere, like whether that's their friends, family. Like it's funny because like you can go to different people for different things, that's okay. Like you might be able to tell your parent, if your parent is your trusted adult, you might be able to tell them something but not tell your friend something, and that's okay, and vice versa.
It's very much okay.
Absolutely.
Do you think your generation feels that way, or do young people feel like their trusted adult has to be their parent?
I don't think I think from who I know, and I don't think we think that our trusted adult has to be our parent. It's if that's your parent, that's awesome. That's your trusted adult. That's your mentor. It can literally be anybody.
It can.
For me, it's actually some of my English teachers. They're my trusted adults. They know they're my trusted adults.
Very good.
And I'm very grateful for their support. They've helped me to be more vulnerable, to be more authentic, and to avoid that burnout. And having somebody there to help you with that. There's another quote actually. Unfortunately, I forget the author, but it's called "No Man is an Island."
Okay.
Everyone's like part of the continent, and so like whether you're trying to figure out something alone, just to have support there. You don't have to be alone either in this process. You can have somebody there, whether that's me for my English teachers, or through my friends, family, or anybody for their trusted adults, to have somebody else there to go through that journey with you makes it all that more powerful, makes it all that more meaningful. And you can share that with them.
No man is an island. Yeah. I would encourage our listeners. I think our school system has done a really good job of teaching young people to identify who their trusted adult is. The fact that that can change over time. It may not always be your English teachers. I'm grateful that it is now. But I think identifying who that trusted adult is prior to needing them is really, really important.
Absolutely.
And I would encourage the parents listening. This is a hard one. As a parent, we always, we want to have our child think of us as a trusted adult. Oftentimes we aren't your trusted adult, and allowing our child to know that I don't have to be your trusted adult. I know that you still love me. I know that our relationship is still authentic and good and valuable. But knowing that you can go to someone else if I'm not that person that you feel comfortable talking about, whether it be this topic or not. I love how you said that I have different adults for different things. I think that's super, super wise.
Yeah, because you don't have to go to just one person. Like you said, like you can go to your parents for one thing or your friends for another, and it's not, like you said, it's not something to take insult to or offense to, because like everybody has different people that they feel comfortable with in certain situations and stuff. And that's not to discredit anybody being a parent, because I'm not a parent. I don't know the first thing about being a parent. But we do, like, I appreciate my parents for all they've done for me, whether that's through growing up or in my life. I appreciate all that they've done for me, even if I don't go to them for all of my troubles or all of my conflicts. But they still, regardless, have a place in my life because of what they've done.
Absolutely.
And the fact that they're my parents, and this is a shout out to my parents. I love them very much. And I'm just grateful to have, them and my trusted
adults. I'm sure they are very grateful to have you as their child, and they are very proud of you. You're a wise young person that's going to take yourself very far, I can tell. So I have 2 more questions for you. What advice would you give to a student that feels like they are putting too much pressure on themselves and potentially reaching burnout?
I think literally stepping back, literally bringing yourself back and to see what is going on in front of you, to see what you've been doing, because realizing that you've been doing something is the first step. And once you can realize that, then you can go from there. And like I said, it's so easy to be distracted. It's so easy to get caught in, a rhythm or a trance of what's going and just go with it, even if it might be harmful to you. But to literally step back, to pause and just think, okay, is this right? Is this who I am? Is this okay? How is this affecting me? Like, you can ask, how is this affecting others? But how is this affecting me is the more important question for yourself. And like for me, when I get all caught up, it's literally like stopping and just thinking about like what's going on. Whether I'll write out often like what's on my mind or something like that, because that's another way I like to
process.
Absolutely, yeah. If I don't have the option to talk to people, which I do love to talk to people, but I love to write too.
Journaling type.
Yeah, to like not like categorize, but to just step back and almost sort yourself out in however way you can do that.
Stepping back, pausing, sorting, and asking, how is this affecting me?
How is it affecting me, and how can I reach out?
Nice.
If it's affecting me in a way that might be more dangerous,
that I don't like, or that I don't want to continue.
Yeah.
That's good advice. Okay, we always wrap up our podcast with the same question, and this you can take this question however you would like. What does the world need to hear right now?
That's such a good question. Oh my gosh. There's a lot of things the world needs to hear. I feel like rather than hearing, the world needs to listen. Because you can hear something, but you might not understand it if you're not listening. And so when you can take that moment to listen, whether that's, listening to yourself or listening to somebody else, there's an effort, there's a conscious effort that goes behind it, but that effort goes so far. And yes, like we can hear, there's a lot of things that we can hear, but if you can listen, that's where you'll find the beauty in life. That's where you'll find those troubles, where you'll find the beauty, and that's how you create empathy. And that's how you create an understanding of others, but also yourself too.
It's really beautiful. I just listened to everything that you said, and I got shivers because that's just like really, really simply beautiful.
Thank you.
We can listen. Solely, thank you so much for being my guest today.
Oh, thank you for having me on.
Super grateful that you spent time with us. I think this conversation is going to be insightful. And to our listeners, I say tune in next time to Hopeful Conversations, and remember, hold on, pain ends.